Hi.
Hello. You want
Well,
me to start?
go
Well,
ahead. This is your show.
okay. Welcome everyone to BUTV. For this evening's segment, we have Kathleen on the other side of the mic, so the tables have been turned. Kathleen created this great platform to spotlight and showcase Black female authors of children's books written for Black and Brown girls. And I thought it was only appropriate that she has the opportunity to also participate as an author in this platform. And although this was wrapping up a week of Black children's books, Black History Month, it's also a great segue into Women's Month, celebrating women. So we kind of pulled it all together. So let's get started. So, short intro. Kathy is my daughter, and Kathy has been involved in literacy since she was a young child, teaching her younger sister Bentley to read by the age of 3. So when she became a teacher, an author, a publisher, none of us in the family were surprised with those activities. So in the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to learn more about Kathy's inspirations, her challenges, and her journey. Welcome, Kathy.
Welcome. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah. So, when did you realize you wanted to be a writer?
So I always wrote. I don't think I put I guess like the idea of being a writer on it until I maybe was in college, because I started writing a lot of poetry, and I always thought that I was going to publish a book of poems first, which makes sense. Actually, Summer in the City is a poem, but I just always wrote stories as a little girl, and I just kept them in a notebook, several notebooks.
So, real quick, not in the questions, but you brought it up, the poetry.
Yes.
And you have an event that happened around your poetry with someone that we all know and love in the city of Philadelphia.
Man, okay. So in 2000, when I first started teaching, I had gotten sick, and we couldn't figure out why. And I had been going to the doctors, and I was always nauseous. And we found out that I had something going on with my spine. So it made me feel bad. Like for a long time, I just didn't feel well for like a month. And then my dad wanted to cheer me up. So he said, well, come on, let's go to this thing they're having at the Laugh House. Cousin Bashir is doing it. And so I said, okay, cool, I'll go. He said, bring your poems. I was like, yeah, okay. But I brought them. And then when we got there, he introduced me to like the different members of the Roots crew. And then Bashir said, well, let me introduce you to a poet that I know. And it was Jill Scott. And it was actually a month before, or maybe like 2 months before, she released her first album, Who is Jill Scott? And she looked at me and she said, hey, sis. And I was like, hey. And she said, oh, I see you have a poetry book and we're talking. She said, are you want to get up there tonight? And I was like, no, no. And she said, why not? I said, I'm nervous. And she said, let me give you a piece of advice. She said, when you stand up on that stage and you look out on the audience, just think to yourself. This is an adult platform. So she said, fuck it, or fuck them, fuck them. She was like, look at them and think to yourself, F them, and do whatever you want to do up there. Don't think about anybody else. And a month later or 2 months later, Who is Jill Scott dropped, and I felt like that was my kindred friend. I felt like we knew each other. We went back, and all her songs just always resonate. I just love her. Like, she's just been one of my favorite artists since she's come out. I bought that CD like 5 times.
Okay. So I thought that since you brought it up, we would just touch on that, because I always love that story. So your first book,
yes,
Summer in the City. Tell us about the process, how long it took, finding an illustrator, and finally getting it published.
So I wrote Summer in the City in 2006. I was sitting in a children's lit class. I was working on my master's at Westchester University, And the professor, she read Honey, I Love, because at the beginning of every class, she would read us a book. It was a children's lit class. And when she read Honey, I Love, it just took me back to my childhood. And I just started to write a poem. And it didn't have a name at the time, but it just captured all of the fun things I did growing up as a kid. And then I read it like a lot, and I read it to a lot of people. And then the ideas started to come to me like, you know what, I think this is going to be my first book. I think this is so dope. It captures my childhood perfectly. The only thing is I had things in there that I eventually took out. Like I tweaked it over time. But I'll say like 2010, I was going through a lot of personal changes in my life. And I don't know, that was something that I clung to. So I started the project to, publishing my book. And I started to use a vanity press. Like, I think it's like, it's a bunch of them, but basically you pay them to publish your book. It was crazy expensive, and the illustrations looked amazing on their website. But when they actually gave me my first draft, we were on vacation in Destin. And remember, I just broke out crying because I'm like, this is not what I expected. And it looked like really bad clip art. Right. And so I knew the process was going to start over. That was summer of 2010. It finally came to life in 2013. And what happened was when I went back to work in September, I was reading this book, The Secret Olivia Told Me. And I'm like, yo, I really love these illustrations. I love the silhouettes. And if you look, like the whole book is like that. It's all silhouettes. And then I said, well, who's the illustrator? I bet you she would do my book because my book is so decent. Like, it's so cool. So I Googled her and I realized she lived in Philadelphia. And then that's all she wrote. Like I went on every website. Yeah. I found her publishing company. I sent several emails to them. I found her on LinkedIn. She wasn't on any social media. Finally, I think her publishing company was like, will you just contact this girl? So she finally reached out. Oh, and then my neighbor knew her, Jill, across the street. Right. Like they go to the same, like they're what is she? Jehovah's Witness. And they went to the same kingdom, or I don't want to say it incorrectly, but they same place to pray. Yeah, the hall. And so she called her mom. She put out a call for me, and next thing you know, she emailed me back and she told me no several times. So I said, well, do you do commissioned art? And she said, yeah, I do commissioned art. I said, well, can I commission some art from you? And she said, sure. So I think I paid like $600 or something, something for her to draw me some artwork. And every time we met to discuss the artwork, I just talked about my book.
So you just sucked her in. So, I mean, I know the journey for the illustrator, and you're very particular about your illustrators. I've watched you go through in the selection process and get great art and not so great art. But once you got past that, then tell us about the publishing. Like, what did it really take to get it into book form?
Okay, so the hardest part was the illustrations for me, in my opinion, because I felt like at the same time that I found Nancy, I also discovered a publishing, no, what is it called? Like a printer. And they were located in Canada. Right. And I didn't have the book or anything, but I reached out to him and I just started talking to him, asking him questions, and he just took me under his wing, and he talked to me for about a year, and I never paid him anything. Like I didn't have anything to get printed. He just, every time I had a question, I don't know, I called him and he answered. And so he really helped me through the process. And Nancy did a lot of the formatting. So Nancy did the formatting, and then he did the printing. And then I had a book. I talked to a lot of people along the way, though. So when the vanity press didn't work,
show us the book.
Oh, okay. So the first book. So she said yes. The first book was Summer in the City. This is the first publication, 2013. So when a lot of things happened at one time. When I started contacting Nancy and everything, and I'm reaching out to her, trying to get her to work with me. I was also talking to other people who have published books also.
Okay.
And people were just connecting me with people who they knew. And I have a friend from Temple, her name is Aaliyah. She had published a book, and she's the one that really put it in my head to start a publishing company. She said, you don't want to use a vanity press. She said everything they're charging you for, you can do for a fraction of the cost. They charge you like $250 for one ISBN. You can buy 10 for $250. And so she just, talked to me, and then I started to do a lot of research. Jerry Craft was another illustrator I was going to use, and he gave me a lot of insight as well.
It's interesting that you talk about all the support and information that was shared, because you sometimes get the impression that um it's a very closed community, like people don't share. But I mean, from the conversations that you've had all week, and I've listened to most and watched most of the interviews, people talk about the support that they've gotten. So how do you, and then this platform is another form of that. So how do you, two questions: why the indie path? Why did you choose the indie path? And then two, how do you keep this kind of paying it forward on a going? Like, how do you keep it going?
So two things. A lot of people were willing to give me support and answer questions. I'm very inquisitive, but there were a lot of people who didn't.
Okay.
Also, like, it was a lot of people who didn't. But if I don't know, I think my story resonated with a lot of people, which helped. And then people like Facebook, the Facebook community, my friends, a lot of people shared stuff. But what was the first question? Because
Why the indie path? Why?
because when I initially submitted like my manuscript to different publishing companies, I didn't get not one response. And in hindsight, it was crap. Like it didn't look good. But I thought in a moment, like at where I was in my life, I thought that it was the bomb. I thought I did everything I was supposed to do correct.
Yeah.
But now when I look at it, I probably could have used more guidance. But I just was so stubborn, and I wanted to get my book out, that I figured if nobody was going to publish the book, I'd publish it myself.
So what is Summer in the City really about?
Oh my gosh. So Summer in the City is a nostalgic story about growing up as a kid. When we played outside, we played outside. We left in the morning and we came home when the street lights came on. So it just takes you through the day. So the first thing I did, we woke up, we would sit on the porch, we would hang out, play jacks, talk, play cards, Uno, whatever. We would play hopscotch. Then we would race to the pool. We would play at the pool all day, go get some water ice. At some point during the day, get some ice cream on the way home, sit on the porch after we ate dinner, collect lightning bugs in a jelly jar. And then when the street lights came on, it was time to go home. And so then that's when the story ends. That's when we go home.
Okay.
And it's just highlighting just the fun we had, like making the neighborhood our playground.
Yeah.
We played everywhere. We rode our bikes. We went to the park. We went to the pool. So yeah.
So then you republished Summer in the City. Do you have a copy of the republished one?
Yes. So then I republished.
Second edition.
This is we called it the reboot. Yes. So the reason why I republished Summer in the City is because I always wanted to do a series for the picture book. And so when I launched Dear Beautiful Brown Girl, we have characters. We have the BU crew. And so basically I republished Summer in the City so that it could feature the BU crew. So we did where Summer in the City was super creative and cool because you don't have any faces. And so you kind of look at the silhouettes and you can become the character because everybody can relate to one of the silhouettes. And so throughout the story, you're telling a story and they're all silhouettes. When we did Summer in the City, I wanted to give the characters dimension. I wanted them to have personalities. I wanted the readers to relate to them in a different way. So if you're familiar with the BU crew, you actually get to see them come to life.
Okay.
Through a story. So that's why
that's really good. I really did enjoy that. So you have other books. Tell me about the other books that you've that you have written?
So I have Ziggy Tales, which
Yes.
came out a year after Summer in the City. And the reason why I did
Very
Ziggy
different
Tales,
illustrator. Very different illustrator with
yes,
Ziggy Tales.
yeah, very different. So this is Naomi Robinson, and she lives in London.
Okay.
I found her also on the internet. We were in a group together, and I loved her illustrations. And I reached out to her, and she told me no. The first 2 times. So then I asked her, like, well, why? Why don't you want to work with me? And she said, because if you're looking for illustrations like this, I don't draw like that. And I
Right.
said, but I'm not. That's why I contacted you and not the other illustrator. I
Okay.
want your style for the next book that I have coming out. And so I did the chapter book. Two things happened. Number one, my cat got out the house, um, but he never came home. So I kind of turned it into a story. I felt like it was a story a lot of kids could probably relate to, and I put some lessons in here as well. But also, my ego made me write a chapter book because I felt like Summer in the City told the best story. Even though it was short, it resonated with a lot of people because it just touches on something we all experienced growing up.
Right.
The pictures got a lot of attention. And I felt like, but what about the book? So I did the chapter book because I wanted the story to keep the attention and to stay focused, like to stay in the focus
Okay.
when I published it. So there are pictures in here, but they're like spot images.
Okay. So we've had many conversations, and one of the statements that I know that gets you riled up is there are no books for our Black and brown children. Why does that get you so riled up?
Because it's not true. Like, there are a lot of books for Black and brown children. The problem is not the books, the issue is access.
Okay.
Because you can't find all of these books on Amazon. You can't find them all on Target. Sometimes you can only find them when you go to specialty bookstores or events. Or like for me, I did a lot of vending events. I did like flea markets before this was on even on Amazon. And so there are a lot of books. I think what we struggle with is access. Of course, we can always have more. Like, you can never have enough books, but there are a lot of books out there that represent us and tell our stories. Just people don't have a lot of access to them.
Yeah, because you had that really cute post of the little girl reading, and she must have had like 20 or 30 books like
Mhm.
around her. And so how do you think um we can create greater access?
Well, I
I'm
mean,
talking to you
now,
not just as an author, but also as a person who has platforms that you spotlight authors.
with I'm not Instagram. Well, actually, Instagram now with social media. Now with Amazon, Amazon has a platform where you can independently publish a lot easier than you could like when I published Summer in the City.
Okay.
And then you have other platforms like Ingram Spark, where that's a huge way to distribute your book. Like, they have huge distribution worldwide, like Amazon. But bookstores, libraries, schools, they choose to primarily purchase from Ingram Spark, and so now you have access to Ingram Spark and you can get your books in different schools and stuff. So now it's a lot more access than previously.
Hmm.
But I used to do the children's book fair in Philly, the one that they had at community college, and
Right.
she would always have like tons and tons of Black books, but you would never see these books in Barnes and Noble. You wouldn't see these books in Borders.
Right.
Now it's a lot easier, but back in 2013, 2014, it wasn't as much access.
And that's really good to know. And I think if you go on Amazon, you can find many of the authors that you
Yeah.
interviewed this week. Their books are available there. So tell me, your books are directed to Black and brown girls,
Mhm.
and colorism is an issue within within the Black and brown community. So how did you go about focusing on, or at least bringing into your stories, diversity and inclusion within our Black and brown communities?
Okay. So ask that again.
So the the color scheme, okay?
Right.
I mean,
Oh, okay. So
go ahead.
Well, okay, so initially, That's why I enjoyed the silhouettes, because when you look, you know that they're Black kids. You get the feeling that they're Black.
Mm-hmm.
But because there was no skin tone, it's a silhouette. It could essentially be whoever you wanted it to be, whatever skin tone you wanted them to be. When I did Dear Beautiful Brown Girl, all of my characters are based on my nieces. And now I have like 3 former students. So we have 11 total characters, but they range in skin tone. And so I just try to create characters that don't just, stick to one element or like stay in a box. And I base them on real life people, because if there's one, then there's several. And so
Right.
I just try to create characters. All of my characters are unique. All of them have different qualities, in the way that they wear their hair, in the way that they dress, in the way that they act, their interests, and also in their skin tone. The skin tone is one element, but it's not the only element that's
Right.
important for diversifying. And so like Fallon, Carmen was so gracious enough to allow me to use her daughter as one of the characters in the BU crew, and she has selective mutism. And so I've had, different people reach out to me, and we'll be developing characters over time that will just represent real girls who, number one, support Dear Beautiful Brown Girl, and just creating characters and products and things that look like them and capture them, because if they exist, then there are several people out there that
Right.
will be able to relate.
So Summer in the City, Ziggy
Yes.
Tales, but you also have like journals and other things. So tell us about
Yeah.
some of your other publications.
So let me grab this. So my first journal was actually a Love Your Selfie journal. And basically it's a book full of prompts, and it's a coloring book as well, for young girls to read and to think about their strengths and qualities. Because as a teacher, and as a dean of students, I find that students sometimes have a hard time talking about themselves and celebrating what makes them unique and special. And so by going through the book of affirmation prompts, like what makes me special, what makes me feel most comfortable in my skin, what do you see when you look in the mirror, right? 3 qualities that you love about yourself, and bring it, like having them think about it and being able to communicate it so that they're aware of it, because sometimes we don't hear it enough. I remember I was helping one student write their high school application essay, and they
Mm-hmm.
had a very difficult time talking about themselves, and they couldn't tell me what qualities were strengths for them. And I start asking them questions and pulling it out of them, and then she realized that she has all of these great strengths and
Right.
qualities, but it didn't come to her automatically. So one of the motivations behind this book was just having our beautiful brown girls think about, their strengths and their qualities and what makes them special and unique.
So, affirmations are very important.
Mhm.
It's funny because the movie The Help and Viola Davis in that scene, you know,
Right.
with the little white girl kind of brought it to life, right? But the affirmations are important, and affirmations are very important in the Black and Brown community. So tell me about the affirmation book that you've just done.
So then I just recently published, this actually launched, I put it out there today, but I've had it for a few weeks. But anyway, it's Love Your Selfie, a parent's guide to teaching and using affirmations. And this is just helping parents. It's a resource that helps them teach and use affirmations, like why are affirmations important? Why is it necessary to affirm our beautiful brown girls? But it can be used for any beautiful girl. Like why is it important to talk to ourselves in a certain way? How do we strengthen our inner voice? Because what do you hear when you don't succeed at doing something? Do you tear yourself down, or do you encourage yourself to keep trying? Like, what's that inner voice? And how we speak to ourselves is important, because we're our first voice.
Right.
um,
And we're our harshest critics.
right. And so just, it's really cool because it also gives some affirmations, and it how to use affirmations with your child. tips for success. It's just a real good guide for helping parents, teachers, coaches, aunties. And then I also have this. I've never promoted it, but this is a slam book. Because again, as a teacher, I'm always thinking about things that would be helpful and beneficial for students in a fun way. And a slam book is basically a book of questions. All your friends can have a number. So I would be like number 1, you would be number 2, Bentley could be number 3. And then there is a question like top 3 snacks. And so I always answer, what number was I? 1? I always answer on number 1 if I'm number 1.
Oh, okay.
You would always answer on number 2. And it's just a book of questions. Under my bed, is it clean or messy? Just random questions.
Yeah.
You pass it around for your friends. Yeah, I said this spring.
I've seen that.
I've had it for 2 years. Like this came out COVID. I
We'll
wrote this with COVID.
We'll talk. So
yeah.
Your inspirations. What are your favorite books? What are the books? And you said something the other day, something along the lines of, you'll read other books. You said that you were going to get a book that you had just written and you were going to highlight because you loved the way that the author did with her descriptive language. So What are the books that you go to? What are the books that inspire you?
So I read all types of books. But the book you're talking about is 7 Days in June. I just finished it. That's an adult novel, but her language was so rich and her descriptions were so, I described it as delicious because I really liked the way she just described things and the way how she was just the description. She was very descriptive, and the imagery she created was, I could see them, it was good. So I wanted to highlight to get ideas on how I could be more descriptive in the way that I describe things as well. I'm a student, I'm a learner. Okay. And so as a teacher, we call it a mentor text. When I'm teaching writing to my students, I'll use different books to teach different skills for writing or different elements of writing. And as an adult, I do the same thing. Okay. But I love picture books. I collect picture books. I buy them. I have over probably about 5,000 books in my personal library. I love picture books. I love young adult novels. I enjoy reading young adult novels because I use them for lessons. So I read anything.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So last evening, you introduced us to the MedGal group. Your author.
What was it? The Med Squad.
The Med Squad. Yes. Yeah. And you have the BU crew.
Yes.
So tell me how you have incorporated supportive sisterhood into your writing.
What, for like my readers or
just right? Lessons.
Say it again.
Just as lessons, like
just as lessons. So I mean, well, especially with the series that I'm working on now, I'm working on the BU Crew series, and they encounter challenges, and so they basically encourage each other throughout the book. So when something is tough, or if they're experiencing something, like something happened in school, they have meetings. Like after school, they get together, they do their homework together, and they talk about their day, and they give each other advice, and it's encouraging. And so that's how I kind of tie the lessons throughout the narrative. And then they go back to school and they implement those tips and they learn. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, because that's life. But that's how I incorporate that through my writing.
So what's next? Because we're coming down to the end of the half hour. So what's next, Kathy? What do you have going on?
Okay, so what's next? I resigned from my job with the School District of Philadelphia. So comes, I'll say July, actually, I'll be able to put 100% of my focus into the two things that I'm most passionate about, which is teaching and writing. And a lot of that will be through Dear Beautiful Brown Girl and my newest venture, the Light Bulb Literacy private tutoring practice. And so I'll be able to spend more time writing and doing more behind the scenes work, just on the things that I'm most passionate about. I have this like professional nomad vision that I'm trying to achieve. And I think this is my first step in getting there. So, oh, look, we have like 11 comments. I didn't even know. Also, I'm working on not Summer in the City, but a book series. I'm still writing, do a lot of writing. You have spearheaded the nonprofit, so that should be coming soon. The nonprofit foundation for Dear Beautiful Brown Girl. And I just want to be like free and just do the things I'm passionate about.
Okay. So as we come to the end of our time, notice I kept us on track, right?
Yeah.
The lightning round. I called it speed questions, but it's the lightning round. One of the best parts, I will give you a prompt, and you give me the first thing that comes into your head. Okay? Favorite food?
Okay, so it's pizza.
Okay.
I can't eat it right now, but it's pizza. I'll just leave it at that. I love pizza.
Okay. Guilty pleasure?
Reality TV.
Last book you read or listened to?
7 Days in June. I mean, if we're talking about adult books.
Yeah, adult books.
Yeah.
Favorite day of the week?
Tuesday always comes to mind.
It's not Sunday?
I mean, I love Sunday. I love Sunday. Well, listen, when I resign and I'm a retired teacher, every day when I was on sabbatical was my favorite day of the week. So I want to get back to that. I want to get back to enjoying every day like it's my favorite day of the week.
Okay. Most important question. Favorite parent?
Ma. You are my favorite mother. Isn't that how you spin it?
Yes, that's how I spin it. Yes, it is. So, Kathy, that wraps it up for us. To all those who have joined us or will join us, I hope that you have found this enjoyable as I did. And I want to thank Kathleen for creating this platform and introducing us to so many writers over the past week. And it was an international group.
Yes.
We went cross-continent, and I look forward to you growing this platform and perhaps doing something that brings all these Black authors together in one space at some point in time. So thank you for joining us here tonight on BUTV, and have a good night.
Thank you. Mom, you did good. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.